So, with Dynamite pretty much dropping a lot of hints, mostly through the Darby Allin Sting promo, of the fact that CM Punk is pretty much locked in to show up at AEW when it goes to Chicago over the next month or so, basically within the last week or two, last couple of weeks in August, and as well as into the first week in September. You know, the question obviously is on the minds of a lot of fans is, how do you bring CM Punk in? You know, if CM Punk is indeed officially signed, if you will, with the company, or he's reached some kind of a agreement, verbal or not, to where he makes appearances here and there at times when needed. The question is, how do you bring him in and utilize him right off the bat? And these are good questions. Now, the one tipping point in a lot of fans' minds is when it was announced on Dynamite that Tony Khan had booked the United Center on the, I think, what is it, the 20th? Let me check. I think it's the 20th of August for Rampage, the first dance, as it's being called. It's a special 1-hour edition of Rampage, you know, entitled The First Dance. And a lot of people pretty much have speculated, especially with Darby Allin adding more fuel to the fire when it comes to that announcement, that this being a 23,000 seat venue, and basically the home of the Chicago Bulls and Blackhawks, if you will, you know, obviously it's led to speculation that it's all but confirmed that Punk is coming in. But like I said, how do you bring him in? You know, how do you utilize him depending on the agreement? Is it a full-time agreement, you know, where he just shows up once a week and that's it? Is it an agreement that is kind of similar to his, you know, agreement with Fox Sports, aka WWE Backstage, where he just shows up when he needs to, or when the opportunity presents itself, or when the storyline presents itself with something? You know, how do you introduce him? And these are all fair questions, and I think honestly, you know, this might sound repetitive, but I think the best logical way to introduce Punk, and I think maybe he might agree with this, is you bring him in at the United Center, you know, because that's why you booked it, because you know if he's going to be there, it's going to sell, and you promote him as being at All Out, but not in a competitive standpoint, you know, just yet. But you bring him in and you make him basically the special guest referee, or you make him the ringside enforcer for the Omega Page AEW World Title match. Thus, you know, pretty much, you know, all but confirming we're going to have a decent one-on-one match and a clean finish. And if not all but confirming that Page will walk out, you know, with the AEW World Title. But why do I think they should do this? Why do I think this would be the perfect setup if you're going to use the United Center, you know, for an episode of Rampage, a special edition of Rampage called The First Dance, you know, to bring CM Punk in? You know, why do I feel this would be the best way to, you know, bring him in? Well, mainly because you got Full Gear coming up in November. And depending on what kind of deal CM Punk has agreed to, you know, if one of his first matches is going to occur before this year is out in an AEW ring, and you want to draw views and pay-per-view buys, and you want to drive ticket sales, you know, probably more so than expected, you know, for the St. Louis area for Full Gear, then the most obvious direction to go with when it comes to maybe a match headlining or co-headlining that event, you know, would be Punk versus Omega. And that basically what could happen at All Out sets that up. You know, like I said, you can bring Punk in, you can have Tony Khan announce him as either the special guest referee or the ringside enforcer to ensure we have, you know, a clean one-on-one match for the world title, and you just go from there. I mean, in story, you could have Omega get in Punk's face, depending on, like I said, what, you know, title he has during that match, or what, you know, responsibility on screen that he has during that match. You can have Omega get in Punk's face, ace and everything, by blabbing that he's the best in the world, kind of getting carried away and everything, and eventually that confrontation, or one of those confrontations, could cost him the match, and you know, we end up having a new world champion as a result, and away we go. And I know some people hearing that would say that's kind of overbooking this world title match, and that is true. But if you want to keep Omega strong and make him in story kind of come out and say, hey, Page couldn't beat me cleanly, you know, without help from CM Punk, without help from our guest referee or our guest enforcer, you know, so I deserve a rematch, you know, against him, you know, for the world title, you know, on a special edition of Dynamite, which you could book him to lose cleanly. You could use that Dynamite to, you know, that special edition of Dynamite to have him lose to Page cleanly without any, you know, BS or anything happening. Or maybe you have Punk show up on that one and he doesn't do anything. He just shows up, you know, on the, you know, on the stage, on the rampway, and it distracts him just enough for Page to hit the buckshot lariat and win the match basically clean. Then, you know, like I said, you basically have taken the steps into building to one of your headline matches, your headline main events that are going to, you know, sell tickets and pay-per-view buys for your Full Gear pay-per-view in November. So to me, if it does turn out to be true, and you know, it looks like it's all but confirmed that it is going to be, it's going to turn out to be true, depending on the kind of deal, like I said, that's been made between Punk and AEW. To me, the best solution, you know, in bringing him in is not just to make him arrive and debut on that edition of Rampage at the United Center, but then to also, you know, use that edition of Rampage to make the announcement that he's either going to be the special guest referee or the ringside enforcer during the main event, and then you use that to basically build to the matchup everybody wants to see, you know, before the year is out, and that is basically the battle of the best in the world between Punk and Omega. And when you think about it, even and from my opinion, Punk might even think this is a good idea, in my opinion anyway, that if you do that and you have Omega lose to Punk, that's just basically taking another step in getting Omega back to a face. And, you know, by either, you know, well, basically I would say assumingly having Don Callis turn on him for being a failure, for losing the world title and everything, and now losing the status of best in the world, you know, and you can go from there and, you know, build whatever you want, you know, when it comes to a rivalry or feud between Callis and Omega, you know, down the line going into 2022. So, you know, so to me, you know, if it does turn out to be true that Punk is coming in, especially with all the hints that were given on Dynamite, then yeah, I think this is the best solution. I think you bring him in at Rampage, the first dance at the United Center. You make the announcement he's going to be the special guest referee or ringside enforcer for the world title match between Page and Omega at All Out. And then you use that to build to Punk and Omega at Full Gear, because, you know, it's pretty much confirmed that Page is going to win the world title, and right now what they're doing, I will agree, is kind of a good way. And, you know, it's a tropey way that we've seen before in wrestling, but it's storyline wise it is, you know, a good way to get to that match. But yeah, it's pretty much confirmed that Page is going to walk out with the title, so it makes sense that if you put Punk in that kind of a position as either, you know, the in-ring guest referee or the outside ringside enforcer, you know, to make sure we have a decent match, and then maybe you have some kind of moment interaction between the two that cost Omega the match in the long run, and then you set up that and then you use that to set up a rematch, you know, on Dynamite, where Punk shows up again but he doesn't do anything and it's just enough to distract Omega. Then, you know, and thus you have Page win basically clean, you know, with the buckshot lariat. You know, off to the races you go. Off to the races you go. So to me, if it is indeed true, if Punk is all elite, if it is all but confirmed that he's all elite, then to me the best way to bring him in at Rampage is to announce that he's going to be the ringside enforcer or special guest referee for the world title match, you know, at All Out. And thus, by putting him in that position, you set him up to, you use that basically to set up to the Full Gear matchup between him and Omega, and what would be, I guess, dubbed as the Battle of the Best in the World, or Battle for the title of Best in the World or something. So that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think, you know, if it is indeed true, Punk's coming in, that, you know, he should be brought in, you know, at the United Center during Rampage, the first dance, and announced as an enforcer at ringside or a special guest referee? Or do you think they should do it another way? Do you think they should bring him in and say, hey, he's gonna accept the challenge of Darby Allin for a match at All Out, which would be good too? But what do you guys think? Comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are on the live chat during the premiere. But to me, honestly, that first way going, I think makes more sense, because again, you have Kenny Omega that says he's the best in the world. You have CM Punk that goes by that moniker. He's the OG that goes by that moniker. So what better way? You know, what better way to set up, you know, a huge main event? What better way to sell a pay-per-view, your last major pay-per-view of the year, you know, in the St. Louis area, wrestling capital of the world, if you will, home of the NWA, you know, one of your partners, that is. What better way to, you know, sell, you know, a main event than to, you know, sell a pay-per-view, I should say, than to having one of your main events be a battle, a match for the moniker title of Best in the World. But let me know what your thoughts are again down below in the comment section, as well as during the live chat, in the live chat, I should say, during the premiere. And I will talk to y'all later.